Brian Kiddie is a commercial fisherman based in Tauranga. He fishes using a technique known as drag netting or beach seining. Brian was a mechanic by training, but took over his father's fishing business in 1991. Brian and his father Don are amongst the last commercial fishermen in the country with a permit to catch fish by this very traditional method.
This business is a commercial fishing operation. It's based in the Bay of Plenty. I've taken it over from my father. My father was pre-quota years. Quota measurement system was in '86, and I became involved in the '90s and subsequently taken over. And my father was fishing prior to that. And then we've also got a family history of fishing in the harbour, and that goes back before such things as fishing permits. Tides are a little bit better today, I think. Yes. This fishery, for anyone still involved in it, it's limited by the lifetime of the permit holder, which is me. So there is a time limit on it, and once I retire from fishing, we cease to exist, whatever way you want to put it. That's the end of this fishery as we know it. At the moment, we're exporting fish through a company called OPC, which is part of Aotearoa Fisheries. And we put fish into the Auckland fish market, which finds its way into the various shops and restaurants. I've got my father with me today, and Daniel, my crewman, giving us a hand today, obviously. It's a three-man operation, generally. We're targeting trevally today with the beach seine method. It's quite a different fishery, it's very singular. The trevally are about the only thing that'll drive with a seine warp. And the harbour has the ability, if it's current, to filter a lot of the fish out. The snapper move in and out of the harbour, so do the trevally, but the trevally have the ability, being stronger swimmers, to actually hang in the water column and stay in the harbour a lot longer. The fisheries actually seems to be improving in general in the harbour, sort of against odds to a degree, because the environment in the harbour is changing with the environmental effects of population and so on. But the stock seems to be doing very well. But our fish stock is based on what's out in the open ocean, and the quota system really has got quite a constraint on what can be caught, and we're one of the lucky ones to hold enough trevally quota to allow us to target that species. The harbour, people seem to think it's a breeding ground. It's only a breeding ground for certain species. Trevally, snapper, carwai, they all migrate in and out as a food source only. It's a feeding ground. You do have species the likes of mullet, flounder, piper, maybe even some of your smaller sprats and so on, that do actually breed in the harbour. But the problem with all breeding of fish, except for egg layers that deposit them in amongst the bottom structures, they're vulnerable to tidal drift. And any fish that was to spawn in the harbour, like the trevally or snapper, the eggs would probably just end up on the beach with the rest of the lettuce weed, etc. So they require open ocean and outgoing currents, not harbour waters. It's a very old method of fishing, probably as old as they can get, really. It's as early as any form of hook and line. This method, we have our net here, which is really, it's just a trap, and the rope I'm sitting on, and under the net is what we call the seine, and that's actually what herds the fish. The net is really a trap. It's almost like a gate at the end of the paddock. You've just got to herd the fish through that gate. Generally, it's set up where we have a short rope that's attached to the bank, and then we set the net, which is only about 40 odd metres of net, and it has a sock which the fish will herd in and trap in, and then the rest of it's done by rope. Legally in this harbour we can use up to 1,500 metres of rope. That's the maximum legal requirement, and the rope is generally what herds the fish, and it gives it some selectivity, because some species won't take any notice. Things like eagle rays, there's hundreds of them in the harbour, they won't drive with rope. Carwai won't drive with rope. There's a bit of gurnet in here, they won't drive, but trevally, snapper will actually drive with it. And then we rely on the tide having an influence where it actually pushes the snapper out. They go out, they move back in and feed across, so we're very lucky we're able to separate them out. Sound and noise travel through water fairly well, so just this jerk, jerk, jerk is a noticeable vibration for the fish. And they'll stay well ahead of the rope. You can probably stop it for 2 or 3 minutes and get away with it. But they're probably swimming 30, 40, 50 metres ahead of it. They may have it close up on them and then just move away. It's inquisitive. I don't think they're actually close enough to see it. It's just the vibration, they just stay away. We can only pull our gear by hand. We're allowed to use a motor to set our gear, but you're not allowed to use any form other than manpower to shift the warp or net. Any methods that utilise that are restricted to about a 2-mile limit out to sea, where you're falling into what's called trawling, Danish seining using winches and motors. Tide's starting to drift through here, and these fish are just turned in the tide and sitting in what I refer to as our trap, our bag, our pen. And as you can see, they're just quite happily mingling, and they'll sit there until we're ready to process them. All of the fishery is fairly shallow water. The maximum depth in here might be 7 metres. Average fish depth probably only about 4 or 5. Tomorrow morning we'll have these fish out of cold storage and into a truck freighted straight to an exporter who will process them the same day. So 3 days they're probably on the market for whatever country they're going to. We're under quite a few restrictions in the harbour. One of the ones is no night fishing. A lot of that's to do with you get a bit more snapper at night. The other ones are no weekend fishing, so we sort of share the harbour with the public to a degree, and no public holidays fishing, as well as the extinguishing of the permit in due course.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.